But yeah, and it is time now for the rugby roundup from the weekend. We're going to hear all about the Sharks game and everything. We got Rob from sharksworld.co.za on the line. Rob, you there?
Yes, I am. How's it, Marky? How you doing?
Not bad, not bad. How's your weekend been?
Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, no worries, man.
Cool. Right. Should we just get straight into what happened this weekend?
Yeah, I reckon. Go
Fantastic.
for it.
Okay. So, right. Well, given that I haven't, well, there doesn't really seem to be any other rugby going on anyway. We'll talk about the Super 15 and Super Rugby competition, which I think is what everybody's probably interested in. We had seven matches this weekend, so a pretty full schedule of games. The only team that wasn't in action this weekend was the Hurricanes, and as it turned out, well, I mean, you guys will know that there's this reasonably bizarre situation where you end up getting 4 log points even when you're not playing. But
okay.
I think from the Hurricanes' point of view, they're in a situation where 4 points isn't going to be enough. So the bye weekend at the wrong time has probably ended up almost killing off their playoff hopes. So the way things stood, sort of, heading into the weekend, there were a few teams, probably really the top 3 teams, I think, in the Chiefs, the Stormers, and the Brumbies, were probably pretty much assured of their playoff places. But then there was a whole logjam of sort of 5 or 6 teams, including the Bulls, including the Sharks, also the Hurricanes, the Reds. They were all sort of hanging around there, bunched together in those last few positions. So this weekend was quite an important one in terms of just sort of trying to separate out that bunch. We started off on Friday morning with the Chiefs up against the Crusaders. That was in Hamilton in New Zealand. The Chiefs really could afford to lose that game and still sort of stay safe at the top of the log and at the top of the New Zealand conference log. They did indeed lose that game. The Crusaders ran out to a 28-21 winners in that game. So I think in the process, the Crusaders have pretty much cemented their place as in the knockout rounds, and they'll probably be at home for those knockouts. The next game was in Brisbane, where the Reds beat the Highlanders by 19 points to 13. Now, certainly from a Sharks point of view, I think we were watching that game quite closely. The key thing there was we didn't want the Reds to get a bonus point out of that game because the Reds were level on points with the Sharks, and I think destiny would have been pretty much out of our hands had the Reds managed to pick up a bonus point in that game. So fortunately, the Reds didn't. They only scored, I think, 2 tries in that game. So that was quite a good result from a Sharks point of view.
Yeah.
The big one on Friday night, that was the Sharks up against the Bulls. So, obviously, coming from Sharks world as I do, I'm going to be undeniably just a little bit biased towards the team from Durban.
Aren't we all? I tell you what.
Good. I mean, if anybody isn't, we should ask the question, why the hell not? Yeah.
Well, put it this way, if anybody does have a problem with it, get them to start their own radio station and their own blog, and then they can
talk about whatever they want to talk about on the rugby side. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm still trying to find the sort of the Cheetah's official website. Never mind their blog site. An ongoing joke we have going.
Non-existent. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so back to what happened on Friday night. Going into the game, the Sharks. Well, I mean, the Sharks' last game really wasn't a very good one. They somehow managed to lose. Concede a bonus point victory to the Lions of all teams. So we've been taking a bit of stick about that one. Bulls were looking pretty good. They were playing also for a home ground advantage in the knockouts. So the Sharks really needed to pick up the full 5 points in that game, and I'm pleased to report that that's exactly what they did, running out to 32-10 victors over the Bulls. It was a pretty one-sided match, if we're honest. I mean, the Sharks got on top early. Tries in the first half by Bismarck Duplessis, J.P. Peterson, pretty much straight after each other. Came up firing the second half, Keegan Daniel going over just after the half started. But the Sharks wouldn't be the Sharks if they didn't have their sort of maybe 15 or 20 minute period in a game where they give us something to worry about. So I think that they let the Bulls come back at them a little bit. The Bulls got a try of their own through Zane Kirshner, but they weren't really. I mean, the Bulls just weren't really in that game. And then you got the feeling they weren't quite as committed and weren't quite as motivated as the Sharks were. Coach John Plumtree even said during the week that he can't really understand what it is, but the Sharks always seem to play their best when they've got the gun pointing right at the middle of their forehead, and I think that was pretty much it. So final try there scored by Louis Ludik, and that was literally with just 1 or 2 minutes left in the game. Final score there 32-10, moved the Sharks up into 6th place on the log, obviously pending other results. Moving on to Saturday's games, in a game that really meant absolutely nothing to anybody. The Blues beat the Force 32 points to 9, so the Blues picked up 4 tries there, but again, those are both sides that are very much out of the running. Next game was a typical sort of Aussie derby, so not really much fun to watch. Waratahs going down to the Brumbies 15 points to 19. I think in that game, it was pretty key for the Brumbies to win there. They could have come under threat from the Reds as possible Australian Conference winners. As it turned out, Brumbies managed to beat the Waratahs. I think it's the first time the Brumbies have beaten the Waratahs in Super Rugby for quite a few years. To be honest, I sort of baffled.
Quite surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, it's is what it is. Brumbies are looking pretty good there for topping the Aussie Conference and the sort of automatic 3rd place that comes with it. Moving on to there were then 2 South African derbies that played out yesterday afternoon. The first one was in Bloemfontein. The conditions were absolutely atrocious for rugby, so it was very wet, very windy. It was never going to be a particularly exciting game. Then we added the Stormers into the mix, so again, that just killed off any chance of anything particularly exciting happening there. Apologies again to any Stormers supporters listening. So the Stormers won 13 points to 6. Only try in the game scored by Stormers wing Joe Aplon. What that means for the Stormers, though, is quite significant. They've won the South African Conference. It's for the second year running. They cannot be caught by either the Bulls or the Sharks. That comes with automatic home ground advantage and a trip straight to the semi-finals for them. So that's a good result. And their fans will say, you know what, we really don't care if you think the rugby we play is boring, and we really don't care if we're not scoring bonus points. At the end of the day, look at the log, and that's what counts.
Exactly. Statistics don't lie.
No, indeed. It might not always be fun to watch, but their fans will say it's fun to watch them lifting trophies. But then again, they haven't really been able to watch much of that in the last few years. So we'll see if they.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how you get there, just get there. Well, that's what they'll probably be thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's right. So final game, again, another one that didn't really have any bearing. Well, it didn't have any bearing on where teams finished at the top of the log. But maybe down at the bottom it did. So Lions against the Rebels. Lions winning their 3rd game in Super Rugby this year by 37 points to 32. Game of 2 halves. I think the Lions ran out to a pretty big lead. Tries there by Waylon Murray. Nice to see him sort of back in action.
My old Westfall Mamata.
I was going to say Westfall boy.
That's yes, he is. Yeah, a couple of years below me. Good, great to see him back.
Yes, so he's been out with a serious knee injury for I think since the latter half of the Currie Cup last year. So he's back, first time back in the starting lineup. He scored a try. Excellent. Other tries for the Lions. Derek Minnie scored twice. Replacement loose forward Jaco Creel scored a try as well. But let the Rebels back into the game. Let them get a bonus point too. And I suppose the Lions kind of did what they could, but the fact that the Blues picked up a bonus point win as well meant that the Lions are still sort of firmly rooted, and I suppose we can use that in a literal and figurative sense, right down at the bottom of the table. Up where things are more exciting, up at the top, if we sort of very very quickly go through how the sort of the playoff permutations are looking at the moment. Chiefs are out in front on 63, but because they lost, the Stormers are just 1 point behind them on 62. So those two sides are looking pretty good for the automatic advancement to the semi-finals. Brumbies in 3rd on 58 points, then the Crusaders on 56. Bulls and Sharks absolutely neck and neck, 54 points each. Bulls ahead slightly there based on points difference. Only other teams then that are still theoretically in with a shot, the Reds and the Hurricanes, again both sitting on 53 points. So that's just 1 point behind the Sharks and the Bulls. What does that mean? Well, it means that as things stand right now, Chiefs and Stormers would have a week off. The Sharks would play the Brumbies in Canberra. The Bulls would play the Crusaders in Christchurch to decide who would go through to the semi-finals. What's required next week, though, Bulls and Sharks both need 5-point wins to be absolutely sure of going through. Sharks play the Cheetahs in Durban, and the Bulls play the Lions in Pretoria. So, again, from Sharks' point of view, we're definitely not going to be counting our chickens about any games, but you'd expect those to be games in which the respective pick up.
I'm actually looking forward to that game, to be honest, because I've got this friend. He's a Durban boy.
We've all got one of those friends.
Yeah, I know. He's a Durban boy. Lives up in Kloof. Okay. He was born and bred in Durban. Okay. Lived there his whole life. Does not support the Sharks. Okay. Supports the Cheetahs.
Sacrilege.
Okay. I know. It's
Judas.
Judas. And
no longer a friend. More of an acquaintance.
But funny enough, he has season tickets at Kings Park. Because he watches every Sharks game. Look, he is a big rugby fan. But yeah, him and I have a few standouts.
Now, how did we?
To be honest with you, the way things are going at the moment, anybody who's prepared to invest in a season ticket and get their bum into a seat at Kings Park every Saturday is welcome, whether they're supporting the Sharks or not.
Yeah,
absolutely, more than merrier.
The attendance there hasn't been wonderful this year.
Oh, I know.
To look at, yeah.
I sort of I give it to the guys in Durban. Every time we watch a Sharks game and the stadium's empty, I'm like, I get out on Facebook and give the Oaks a bit of cuck for attendance. You know what I mean? We all know what school rugby was like. We always had to be at the first team games. It was tradition.
Yeah.
And I really think people need to
get out and
remember
support
that.
the boys. Yeah. But how are we looking on the injury front? I mean, I know we obviously. Great win for the Sharks, obviously, on Saturday, given the Bulls, on paper, had an absolutely phenomenal side out, and obviously Sharks are missing a few key players there. Have the boys come out injury-free from this last encounter, and how are we looking with the injuries that are the existing injuries at the moment?
Well, the thing is, we haven't really heard anything out of the camp yet in terms of the sort of fallout from Friday night. So, injuries ahead of the game. There were a few reasonably big blows there, as you say. Pat Lambie, Willem Alberts. Those were the two big names we were missing. Stephen Sykes, I guess, was the other kind of regular in the pack that wasn't going to be there. Jacques Boertes also wasn't going to be there, but. If there's one thing that the Sharks kind of have in abundance at the moment, it's loose forwards. So, I think we were feeling pretty okay with Boertes not being there, but the loss of Alberts, that was a big one. And then at the back as well, Paul Jordan, a young player, but a player who's done pretty well for the South African under-20 side.
Absolutely.
Also a player that's been, he's looked quite good in the few Super Rugby games he's played for the Sharks. So we were reasonably sort of up against it without those guys. And this week, if we look at what happened, we had another real youngster, Peter Steph du Toit. His grandfather was Piet Spira du Toit, who played for the Boks way back in the earlies. He got his first start at lock, and he played a really, really good first half before he picked up what looked like something between a shin and an ankle injury, and he went off. So he's going to be a doubt.
Bit of a question mark.
There's going to be a question mark over him. There's probably also going to be a question mark over Freddie Michalak, who went off with a sore shoulder. So I think, what we've heard about both Sykes and Boertes is that they were probably pretty close to being back for this for the Bulls game. They should come into the picture for the Cheetahs game. So I think even if Peter Steph du Toit is out, Stephen Sykes will probably come back in. Alberts we don't really know. Alberts is a player that really he gets through a huge workload. And I think he tends to soldier on. That he tends to keep being picked, even if he's carrying a niggle, because he's so valuable to the team in terms of getting that go forward ball. So, for the coaches, I think there's always a bit of a temptation to pick him, even if he's not 100%. So
the Wayne Farvey of the new era, I guess.
That's the one. Yeah. So, I think when he does go down. It does tend to be more serious. If you think about it, what does it take to bring Willem Alberts down?
Oh, exactly, right? Yeah.
You wouldn't like to be that injury, would
no,
you?
I wouldn't, exactly. I wouldn't want to be that person lining him up either.
No, exactly.
Thank goodness he's in the black and white team. Thank goodness he's on the Sharks side.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I remember him. I remember him doing damage against us for the Lions. So, I'm pretty glad to have him. So yeah, if I were a betting man, I mean, I would probably say I don't think Alberts is quite going to be ready for the Cheetahs. If I were the coaching staff, I wouldn't consider him anyway. I mean, a guy that deserves an honourable mention from, well, obviously a few people deserve honourable mentions because it was a really good team performance. But Ryan Kankowski, I mean, he was given man of the match, and I think his contribution was all the more significant because he hasn't really been in the side. He's been struggling with injury. He's been struggling with form, and the guy really, he came back and he played a huge innings. One of the people who helps me out with the website, Isa, I mean, she's very quick to point out, it's like, well, Kanko comes back and he has one good game and everybody's giving him man of the match awards. What about Marcel Coetzee? That kid is just superb every single week.
Phenomenal
That's
player.
A point that's very well made. I mean, Coetzee again was absolutely top of his game. But I think the point is that with those guys in tow, with the Kankowskis, with the Coetzees, the Jean Daysels. I mean, Jean Daysel was on the bench. A few years ago, you would never have thought that Daysel would not be in the Sharks starting lineup. I think we can afford to give Alberts another week off.
Another week off, absolutely. And, obviously, as you say, hopefully the things go our way coming up, and then we'll really need him when things get a bit gritty towards the last stages now.
Oh, for sure. I mean, so, looking at things, and I mean, looking at things from a slightly broader South African perspective, the good news after this weekend is that we look pretty certain to have three of our sides in the knockouts: the Sharks, Bulls, and the Stormers, which is obviously great. I think the thing is that I've completely forgotten what the thing is that I was going to say, if I'm honest with you.
We're gonna be back to a near decent.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the one
with the couple, with the exception of a few boys, we should have a decent squad out in the paddock to take the opposition on coming up now next week.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think we're looking in pretty good shape. It was maybe a little bit touch and go ahead of the Bulls game. Hopefully we get Lambie back in tow. Hopefully Freddie's not too badly injured. And it's another 4 games now, but doing it the hard way, the way the Sharks like to do it, would have been nicer if we could have pulled off a couple of those wins early in the season. The game against the Reds was not the Reds. The game against the Lions was a shocker. The game against the Chiefs was a shocker. If we'd won those 2 games, it might be us in the Stormers' position now, sitting back, looking at a week off, and then playing a semi at Kings Park. But what can you do? Play what's in front of you, and I'm fairly bullish from the point of view of both the Sharks and South African rugby in general. So
yeah, well, let's hope next time that we get to chat to you, we have some good positive news on the result, and we'll be celebrating the victory.
Yep, no, absolutely, for sure.
Oh, wicked.
Good stuff.
Thanks a lot, Rob. That was an awesome rugby report that we had there. Definitely hope you're going to come back next week.
Yep, for sure. Look forward to it, and hopefully we can then sort of firm up who's in the knockouts and look at the big games coming up. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah,
not a problem. Have a good week, everyone.
Really appreciate you coming along, man.
Sure, no problems.
Cheers, Rob.
Cool.
Cheers, guys. Keep well.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Right, there was Rob from sharksworld.co.za giving us a very thorough rugby report there. Some good banter going on there. Speaking of rugby, and radio, there's a station in South Africa called Balls Radio, which, funny enough, I listen to every single day. It's run by Darren Scott. He heads it up. Sasha Montenegro is also joined.
It's a good panel, that.
Yes. They've also got Mr. John Walland.
That's old school.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's he gives all the sports rounds up and that. And they've also got Nicole Flint, who she was Miss South Africa. I might get this wrong now. Miss South Africa 2009.
Right.
And then she was also Miss World, and she was a finalist for the Miss Universe. And then they've also got Simon Hill. He, to be honest, I may be wrong, but actually, you know what? It is him. that does all the the blades. Well, he does the rugby panel type thing.
Right.
Does all these sort of like comedy, like Hugh Blade and
Yeah.
Joel Stransky, Divi. It's hilarious. I mean, Friday's one was unbelievably. I was sitting at my desk pissing myself laughing. People were like looking at me like, "What's wrong with you?"
So what time is this? Is a daily show at a certain time?
It's, well, basically, I mean, Balls runs from Sasha's show, which is called Gears, because obviously he's a hectic motorsport, petrol head.
Yep.
And he's obviously watching the Formula One now. He retweeted one of my tweets now,
right.
which I really appreciate. Thanks a lot for that, Sasha. He runs the show from 12 until 2. And then from 2 o'clock onwards, it's Balls until 6 p.m. in SA time. And I'll tell you what, if you haven't listened to it yet, have a listen. It is, I mean, it's a whole afternoon of entertainment.
And Darren Scott's worth it anyway. He's an absolute gem.
Yeah.